Now, we all know, Bob, that as a business, when the fight is big enough, you've worked with Don King, you've worked with De La Hoya, even Al Heyman. How do you make this happen?
Al Heyman, he refuses to allow any of his fighters to get beat by a top-ranked fighter. And if Terrence fights Errol Spence, there's one winner, and that's Terrence Crawford. That's Terrence Crawford. That's Terrence Crawford. That's Terrence Crawford fights Errol Spence. There's one winner, and that's Terrence Crawford. And Al Heyman refuses to allow it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, Gervonta Davis posted this image via his Twitter and his Instagram.
Who cares?
And it appears that his very next opponent is going to be Leo Santa Cruz.
We knew that already.
Initial rumblings via Mike Copinga indicate that this fight could land in LA and Los Angeles on the West Coast sometime in the summer. The fight taking place there as opposed to here on the East Coast.
In Davis's neck of the woods.
Them staging it over there as opposed to over here, where Davis is from. That lets you know who they're hoping carries this fight. That lets you know that
Leo's fans.
They're hoping that the Chicano fans show up and show out for this fight. They're relying on the Mexican-American support to sell this thing, to carry this thing. No telling if they will or won't, but that definitely appears to be what the PBC and the TMT are shooting for. Otherwise, they would have staged it somewhere over here at, I don't know, the MGM at National Harbor, or Madison Square Garden, the Barclays in New York. Several venue options on Gervonta Davis' side of things, yet they're staging it over there in LA.
Instead of over here.
It is what it is, and to be honest, I'm not the least bit excited about this. I mean, why would I be? Why would I be excited to see a guy who just debuted at 135 square off against a guy who just debuted at 130?
Why?
I know it's going to sound repetitive. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but there are several fights right there at 130 pounds for Leo Santa Cruz if the PBC were more willing to work with other people. And Lord knows that Leo Santa Cruz himself doesn't have an exclusivity contract with either Showtime or Fox that should hinder him from fighting on another platform or fighting on another network. The same is true of Gervonta Davis, and we know this already, that these PBC fighters are not locked down to exclusivity contracts with networks, and yet they operate as if they are. And that's what this fight is a byproduct of, that the PBC sees no value in matching Leo against the other fighters at 130 pounds where he just moved up to, and the PBC sees no value in matching Gervonta Davis against the fighters up there at 135. Instead, they will keep everything in-house by having these two guys square off against each other. And no, I'm not the least bit excited about it. Why would I be? Why would I be excited to see a guy who just debuted at 130 square off against another guy who just debuted at 135, especially when those are both stacked weight classes? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's not in keeping with the best versus the best, because Leo Santa Cruz, he's not the best guy at 130 or 135.
Nope.
And the same is true of Gervonta Davis. The whole fucking thing's kind of pointless. I mean, let's say that it's Leo Santa Cruz moving up to 135 to challenge Gervonta Davis for his baby belt. Because as we all know, Gervonta Davis, he ain't got the full version of that title.
He don't.
Vasyl Lomachenko has the full version of that title. And don't hold your breath waiting for Gervonta to challenge him for it. That's not going to happen.
No way.
But yeah, let's say the contest is at 135. Leo goes up there. He gets his ass kicked by Gervonta Davis.
Okay.
Okay. What's that mean?
Huh?
Leo Santa Cruz was unproven at 135, right?
Right.
He hasn't fought anyone there, hasn't beaten anyone there. So if he goes there and loses to Gervonta, what's that mean for Gervonta?
Nothing.
Not a goddamn fucking thing, because Leo Santa Cruz is a nobody at 135. The only way that this fight could even have a competitive element to it is if it's not at 135, if it's at I don't know, a contracted weight of 130, where Leo just debuted, or maybe 132. And I say this because we know that Gervonta Davis, he came very close to blowing the weight ahead of what was his lightweight debut.
Last fight.
The Gamboa fight. You know, he almost missed the weight for that fight. So you can hypothesize that perhaps making 130 or even 132, that might be difficult for him. That might drain him. And in that way, the fight with Leo could be competitive, because where, Gervonta might be drained as a result of trying to make a catch weight of 132 or 130 or something like that, where he might be drained trying to get there, Leo will be invigorated. Because not that long ago, Leo was fighting at 126, so making 130 or a catch weight of 132 or 133 won't bother him. It could be competitive, albeit for the wrong reasons. The wrong reasons that Gervonta Davis regularly balloons in weight between fights, so many of his fight camps are really just fat camps.
To make weight.
Those are the kind of camps that the night of the fight could leave you feeling drained, gaunt even, weakened, in a weakened state, where a active fighter, a busy fighter, a volume puncher like Leo Santa Cruz could actually pose some resistance. I mean, that's the only way that this thing could have a competitive element. Otherwise, it's just a bigger guy fighting a smaller guy. Pretty much. Another episode of the PBC and the TMT conjuring up smaller fighters to make Gervonta Davis look good, to accent his finer qualities and present him as some kind of concussive puncher, when you know what? Who you're fighting has a lot to do with whether or not they can take your punch or work around it. Who you're fighting. And who you're fighting is yet another guy from a division below your division. God only knows why, because there's no shortage of interesting fights with interesting fighters right there at 135, right there at lightweight. But in order to keep everything in-house and protect Gervonta Davis from the real sharks in the water, right there at 135, they'll put this thing together. The only way this thing could be competitive is if it's at a weight that's hard for Gervonta Davis to make. But if it's at 135, okay then. Well, that favors Gervonta heavily, considering Leo ain't throwing so much as a punch at 135, much less beat anybody good, Not interested in seeing this thing. And it's likely going to be a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I mean, in all likelihood, that's what they're going to bill this thing as. They're going to charge people, what, $75, $79, or whatever it is, to see this thing? I mean, do you guys want to see this?
No.
That's the question. Do you guys out there, do you want to see this fight?
No.
I know I don't. That's why I'm not getting it. Pay-per-view.
Fuck out of here.
$75, $79? Hey, I got an idea. Why don't you suck my 79 times? Because I'm not paying to see this bullshit.
As you were last weekend for Fury Wilder, and they kept saying, if they want to make a fight, proves they can make a fight. They can come across the street.
But listen. First of all, the reason why the Fury and Wilder fight was so big was Fury from the UK. Those fans travel, right? So look at the numbers. I gotta keep saying this all night. Look at the numbers. Errol's last fight, he sold 500,000.
No, he didn't.
Or more. Terence Crawford last fight, he said 30,000. So 530,000 is pay-per-view buys. That's what's gonna get these people in the seats. No, it's not gonna sell a fight. Why would Fox and ESPN join for 530 pay-per-view buys? 530,000, 30,000. That's 530,000. So 530, add that up times 70. Add that up, what's that like? $30, $40 million. Okay, Errol makes 20, 15, 20. Terence makes 15 to 10, right? That's all the money right there. So what do you mean the networks and two promoters are gonna split $5,000 to $10,000? That's what you're telling me? All right then, so why are we talking about the fight? Until he can get his numbers up. The fans don't really want to see Terence Crawford fight Errol Spence. Because when Terence Crawford fight, they don't even buy his fight.
Terence Crawford has participated in 2 pay-per-views, none of which have done very well. These are just the facts. Participated in one against Victor Postol and another against Amir Khan. Neither of those 2 pay-per-views did very well.
It's the truth.
But to that, I'll remind you that, Gennady Golovkin participated in 2 pay-per-views here stateside, right?
Before the Canelo
The
fight.
David Lemieux pay-per-view that did either, 97,000 to 150,000 pay-per-view buys. The Daniel Jacobs pay-per-view that didn't do much better. Okay, neither one of those 2 pay-per-views broke the bank.
Neither of them.
But when he fought against Canelo Alvarez, when he fought against him 2 times, they did over 1 million pay-per-view buys 2 times. Why, you ask? It's not just because he was fighting Canelo. It's because the fans were asking for that fight. There was public demand to see Gennady Golovkin lock horns with Canelo Alvarez. Separately,
They were doing that thing.
they were doing what they were doing. Canelo Alvarez did just under 1 million buys with Miguel Cotto. He did even less than that against Amir Khan, and even less than that against Liam Smith.
Beefy.
When those two guys locked horns with each other, when they met and gave the fans the fight that they were asking for, the pay-per-view buys were astronomical. Million pay-per-view buys for both of those fights. Just over 1 million pay-per-view buys for both of those fights. The same is true in the case of Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. The same is true. Terrence Crawford by himself, given the opponent options, the fact that the PBC welterweights are freezing him out and he's facing a scarcity of opponents. Him by himself, well, he's not going to do that many pay-per-view buys when all he's got to choose from Amir Khan.
And who else?
There was no public demand for an Amir Khan fight, so the buys ain't going to be that good, okay? But if you throw Errol Spence in there, now you're cooking with rice. And Derek James knows that just as much as I or you. He's just using that as an excuse so that Spence can continue to operate with impunity while he fights what other PBC welterweights are out there that may or may not be champions. They're talking about Crawford like he's some kind of fucking contender, like he's not a world champion, like he's not a pound-for-pound elite-level boxer. That's how they're talking about this guy. And they're talking about this guy in this fashion because for them, the risks don't match the rewards. You're not going to sit here and tell me that you think Danny Garcia poses the same risks to Spence that Crawford does.
He don't.
You're not going to tell me that. You're not going to tell me that Keith Thurman
Wayfing.
in his glass midsection. You're not going to tell me that he poses the same risks to Errol Spence that Terrence Crawford does. Keith Thurman barely made it out alive against Josecito Lopez, and he lost his belt to a 40-year-old Manny Pacquiao, all right? That's who Keith Thurman is to the welterweight division. Terrence Crawford is still undefeated. He still is a world champion, a 3-division champion, and a pound-for-pound fighter ranked on many pound-for-pound lists. That's saying something, that as opinionated as people can be with those kinds of lists, you still find the name of Terrence Crawford amongst most all of them. You got Errol Spence's fans, and they're still using Sean Porter as a shield for Errol Spence. What is it about PBC fighters and these designated bodyguards? When it came to Wilder, they were using Luis Ortiz as a shield, and now when it comes to Errol Spence, they're using Sean Porter as a shield. Sean Porter himself is not exhibiting the enthusiasm over fighting Crawford that you guys are exhibiting when it comes to that. And why would you want to see Sean fight Crawford more than you want to see Spence fight Crawford? It's almost like you're protecting Errol. And you know what? The PBC might feel so inclined to do that when one of their star players just got his ass kicked in front of everybody on his own home turf just 2 weeks ago. Only so he could turn around and blame it on the Halloween costume he wore for the ring walk. Okay, you're gonna feel more inclined to protect your assets when you just lost one of them. I told you this already, that these cross-network, cross-promotional fights are gonna seem like a big no-no to the PBC given how things worked out in Wilder versus Fury 2. Goes back to what I told you before. Those guys don't want that fight. For one reason, for some reason, they don't want it. Okay, they could go the rest of their lives and not have to deal with Terrence Crawford, and they're perfectly okay with it. And that's not the strange part. The strange part is that there are actually quote-unquote boxing fans on the ground that are okay with it. That's the strange part. You guys boxing fans, interns for the PBC, what's going on? Do you want the best fighting the best, or do you want what's best for the PBC? You tell me.
Mikey Garcia recently did an interview with us. He said that he's interested in a fight with Josh Taylor, that he would be willing to drop down to 140, and that's a fight that he would be wanting to entertain. What's your thoughts on that, Bob?
Right. As far as I'm concerned, Mikey Garcia just should forget about it, because the money Mikey Garcia wants is obscene, and he's not worth it. He can't draw anything, and let him stay with Eddie Hearn, who squander a lot of money on him. I'm not interested in promoting a fight for Mikey Garcia. Not that he isn't a good fight, not that he isn't a nice fellow. He is a nice fellow, but his financial demands are ludicrous.
Why do you feel that is?
Because money is money. I know what a fight can bring in. I'm not in a position, do I want to be in a position, as Eddie Hearn was with the Zone, squandering other people's money, accomplishing nothing. That's not my business.
Now, do I believe Bob Arum's tirade? Do I believe that Mikey Garcia has set a ludicrous asking price for what could be a Josh Taylor fight? And I dare say yes, but I say yes Not because of what Bob Arum's saying, not because he's the one saying it, but because of what Mikey Garcia just made, fighting the likes of Jesse Vargas. Okay, Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, DAZN. They gave this kid like, what, $7 million to fight Jesse Vargas? So just imagine what Mikey's gonna be asking for to go down to 140 and fight the likes of a Josh Taylor. You can imagine what kind of dollar amounts he'd be looking for a fight like that. So if I believe what's being said, it's not because of who's saying it, it's because of what Mikey Garcia just made. And that's what you can expect from Mikey Garcia moving forward as a result of that. Whether they're talking about him versus Josh Taylor or him versus Terrence Crawford, the asking price is going to be astronomical. If they gave him $7 million over at Matchroom to fight Jesse Vargas, what do you think Mikey's going to ask to fight those two guys, eh? And right now, Mikey's name is tacked on to the name of Manny Pacquiao. Big money in Saudi Arabia is available to ensure that that fight, if it's made, lands there. So it's going to take a pretty big bag, a hefty bag, to get Mikey Garcia to do something else, because in all likelihood, he's holding out for that fight.
Yeah.
This is a sore spot for Bob Arum. The presence of Matchroom and DAZN, the amount of money they have to play with, it creates a difficult environment for what other outfits are out there in the boxing landscape, because DAZN is ensuring big purses to fighters to get them to come over to their side, even if it's just for a one-off. The kind of dollar amounts that an outfit like Top Rank isn't willing to put up. That DAZN and Matchroom are willing to pay fighters more than they are worth.
They are.
Goes without saying. I mean, they've made multi-million-dollar offers to anyone from Mikey Garcia, who we're talking about, but also to the likes of Jamal Charlo. This guy's never even been on a pay-per-view, you understand? This guy, he's not that kind of fighter, he's not worth that kind of money. But they did offer it to him, didn't they?
They did.
And this kind of stuff, it makes it harder for outfits like Top Rank. It makes it harder for outfits like the PBC, because these guys, they got a lot of money, and money talks. And when money talks, people tend to listen, you know? Mikey listens. Between what he raked in for the Errol Spence pay-per-view and what he just raked in for that Jesse Vargas fight, I can totally believe that Mikey's asking price may seem astronomical to Bob, but make perfect business sense to Mikey, because from where Mikey's sitting, hey, he's got lucrative options. He's a familiar name. He's only lost one fight, and that was a fight at a weight where he really didn't belong and still doesn't belong. So I can believe that Mikey's asking price may seem obscene to Bob, although whether or not it seems obscene to you, hey, I'll let you be the judge.